Tjena! Det är mig, podcasterska Katarina på Måsmarkanalen. Och idag ska vi prata om SATSADVERBIAL, men vi kommer att gå lite djupare för att förstå, förklara och komma ihåg olika ord som kallas SATSADVERBIAL. Men innan vi börjar, du behöver slå på knappen prenumerera för att vi träffas i andra olika videor på den här kanalen. So, let's talk about SATSADVERBIAL. So the first thing, when we are talking about such term or using such some or any grammar structure or grammar rule, we need to understand what is it. So, SATSADVERBIAL is translated as sentence adverb, and this sentence adverb modifies the entire sentence, expressing, for example, attitude, opinion, or providing additional context such as time, frequency, or modality. So this SATSADVERBIAL can change the meaning of the entire clause rather than just one part. And they usually appear in Swedish language or in Swedish sentence after the first verb in the sentence and actually or before the object. But I have already been talking about SATSADVERBIAL, especially about the structure of the sentence in this video, so you can go by the link in the corner and check about how to or where to place SATSADVERBIAL in Swedish sentence or in Swedish language. So what I was thinking, that the best way for me personally to learn anything is to put the information into the structure or split the information into categories. And if, for example, with verbs, this system didn't work for me, but with SATSADVERBIAL, it worked perfect. So I was thinking that it's good to share with you this information or this structure or these categories of SATSADVERBIAL in Swedish language. So the first category will be negation and limitation. So these adverbs will indicate the absence, negation, or restriction of some action. And of course, the first SATSADVERB that comes to our mind is, of course, inte, which is translated as not, and it is the most common negation in Swedish language, and it indicates the negation of verb or state. Let's look at the example. Han är inte hemma just nu. You see, han är inte hemma just nu. So we use inte at the third place in this sentence. You remember that in Swedish language there is such thing as bisats, and in bisats we are having a little bit different situation. And maybe one day, if you are going to be active at my channel, I will create the video devoted to SATSADVERBIAL, but in the sentences with bisats. So let's go on. The next one is aldrig, which is translated as never, and it is used to express total negation of occurrence in the past, present, or future. And let's look at the example. Jag har aldrig sett något liknande. I have never seen anything like that. As you see that we have jag har aldrig sett något liknande. So we have aldrig at that place number 3. So nothing has changed. The next one, inte längre, which is translated as no longer, and it is used to, or it implies that something used to be true but is not anymore. For example, de bor inte längre i Stockholm. So they no longer live in Stockholm. De bor inte längre i Stockholm. The next one, heller, which is translated as either and is used in negative sentences. For example, hon vill inte heller gå dit. She doesn't want to go there either. Hon vill inte heller gå dit. So we have inte first and then we have heller. And the last one is knappast, which is translated as hardly or barely. And it is used in cases when we suggest something or something is unlikely or barely true. And let's look at the example. Det är knappast möjligt att hinna klart idag. So it's hardly possible to finish today. We actually need to look at two things here. First is knappast, which is used after är, which is verb, so again place number 3. And then I want to underline the phrase hinna klart. So have time to finish. Hinna klart. And by the way, hinna is one of the verbs after which we don't use at in front of the next verb. And if it is quite new information for you, you can go by the link in the corner and check the video, because I've created just amazing video with the basic verbs in this list, so you know in which cases you need to use at in front of the other verbs. So we are done with the first category and we are going to the next one. And the next one is going to be talking about frequency. So the adverbs will describe how often an action is going to happen. And the first, of course, SATSADVERB that comes to our mind when we are talking about some actions that happen continuously or without exception is alltid, which is translated as always. And let's look at the example. Hon är alltid den sista att lämna kontoret. She is always the last one to leave the office, or who is leaving the office. Hon är alltid. As you see, everything stays the same. Place number 3 with SATSADVERB. The next one, ofta, which is often. And we use ofta to indicate a high frequency of occurrence. And let's look at the example. Vi träffas ofta på helgerna. We often meet on the weekends. So, vi träffas ofta på helgerna. The next one, sällan, which is translated as seldom or rarely, and it indicates low frequency of occurrence, suggesting that something happens occasionally or infrequently. For example, han kommer sällan för sent till jobbet. He is rarely late for work. Han kommer sällan. The next one, ibland, which is translated as sometimes and refers to actions or states that occur occasionally. For example, ibland går vi på bio efter jobbet. Sometimes we go to the movies after work. And pay attention that ibland is a bit special word because it can be actually used in 3 places. It can be used after verbs, so the same as we did in previous sentences when we say vi går ibland på bio efter jobbet, but in most frequent cases we will use ibland in the beginning of the sentence. And pay attention that if we start from anything else, but not with subject, we will use the verb at second place. So we will have ibland går vi, not ibland vi går. Ibland går vi. So that's important to remember. And yeah, I know Swedish grammar or structure can be confusing, but the more we practice, the better situation gets. And I actually have enough of videos with practice exercises where you can do exercises along with me. So let's go on. And the next, and actually the last SATSADVERB in my list in this category is vanligtvis, which is translated as usually. So this SATSADVERB indicates habitual actions or those that occur with some regularity. Let's look at the example. Vi äter vanligtvis middag vid 6. So we usually have dinner at 6 o'clock. Vi äter vanligtvis. You see, situation is back to normal, so we have SATSADVERB at place number 3. Let's move to the next category, which is which I categorized as probability and certainty. So what I mean, it is that these adverbs show how likely or certain something is to happen. The first SATSADVERB is nog, and it will be translated as probably, and it conveys uncertainty, but with a high likelihood of being true. Let's look at the example. Han är nu på väg hem nu. He's probably on his way home. Han är nu på väg hem nu. So he's probably on his way home. The next one, kanske, or some will pronounce this word as kanske, but I have a tip here. The best thing that you can do for yourself, it is to choose one way of pronunciating these special letter combinations as SK, SKJ, and so on, and choose, are you going to say h everywhere, or you are going to say sh everywhere? So I have kanske, so I will use this strategy for all the words that I will see with these word letter combinations. So once again, kanske is translated as maybe or perhaps, and it implies uncertainty with a balanced possibility of either outcome. Let's look at the example. Kanske borde vi boka bord till middagen. Or this same sentence, we can say vi borde kanske boka bord till middagen. So this case is the same as ibland, and it will be more natural, of course, to say kanske at the first place, because in most of the languages this word is used at the first place. But remember, again, if you put kanske, ibland, or any other word in the first place, at the second place will be a verb, and then will be subject. It's very crucial to remember. So once again, kanske borde vi boka bord till middagen. The next one, förmodligen, which is translated as probably, and this word is a bit formal and implying again something is quite likely. So, de har förmodligen redan gått. They've probably already left. De har förmodligen redan gått. The next one, säkert, which is translated as surely, certainly, and it suggests high certainty, though there is still room for doubt. Let's look at the examples. Det kommer säkert att bli bra. Det kommer säkert att bli bra. It will surely be fine. As you see, det kommer säkert. So we have SATSADVERB at place number 3. The next one, troligtvis. Likely, probably. This word, often used for reasonable assumptions, but with a slightly higher degree of probability than kanske. But I think that in most cases you will use it by feeling, but I hope that this little explanation will open up the depth of usage of these words. So let's look at the example. De är troligtvis för sen att ändra bokningen. It's probably too late to change the booking. You see, if we would say kanske, it would be like maybe yes, maybe no. But here it has really higher probability. If you see that. Det är troligtvis för sen att ändra bokningen. Det är troligtvis. Place number 3. And the last SATSADVERB in this category is definitivt, which is translated as definitely. You could guess, of course, and it is used for strong assertion of certainty. Let's look at the example. Vi ska definitivt åka på semester i sommar. We will definitely, like 100%, go on vacation this summer. Vi ska definitivt åka på semester. And as you can see that here we have ska, which is the first verb, and we use definitivt after the first verb and main verb in this sentence. And then we say åka without at because we have ska, and it will be the second verb in this sentence. And now we come to the fourth category of SATSADVERB, which will be devoted to time, and they will modify when something happens, focusing on temporal aspects. So what I mean, let's look at the first SATSADVERB, and it will sound as redan, which is translated as already, and it indicates something that has happened earlier than expected. For example, hon har redan kommit. She has already come. Or she has already arrived. Hon har redan. You see, we have redan på at third place in this sentence. The next one, ännu, which is translated as yet or still, and it is usually used in negative sentences to imply expectation of an outcome that hasn't occurred yet. Let's look at the example to understand what I meant under that. So, de har ännu inte bestämt sig. They have not yet made up their minds. So they didn't decide yet. And once again, de har ännu inte bestämt sig. The next one, snart, which is translated as soon, or also you could hear this word as strax, which is also translated as soon in Swedish language. So it refers to a future event happening shortly after the present. For example, mötet börjar snart. So the meeting will start soon or starts soon. Mötet börjar snart. So we have snart at place number 3, straight after the verb. The next one, genast, immediately. So it urges instant action or response. For example, jag ringde genast läkaren. I called the doctor immediately. Jag ringde genast. The next one, Fortfarande, which is translated as still, and it's actually one of my favorite words in Swedish language. I don't know why, but I like how it sounds. Fortfarande. So it implies continuity of an action or state over some time. For example, de arbetar fortfarande på projektet. So they are still working on the project. De arbetar fortfarande. Place number 3. So the situation stays the same. And the next category is attitude or modality. So these adverbs will reflect the speaker's or your actually attitude toward the information or modality of the statement. So let's look at those SATSADVERB. First is you, which is translated, or of course it cannot be translated into English, but we will say that it is translated as you know, and after all. So it introduces shared knowledge or something assumed to be understood. For example, du vet ju att han alltid kommer sen. You know that he always comes late after all. So it was like some obvious information. Du vet ju. And again, place number 3 because you is still SATSADVERB. The next one, faktiskt, which is translated as actually, in fact, and it is often used to introduce surprising or clarifying information. Let's look at the example. Jag har faktiskt redan sett filmen. I've actually already seen the movie. Jag har faktiskt redan sett filmen. Place number 3. The next one, egentligen, actually, really. So it suggests a contrast between expectations and reality. For example, jag vill egentligen inte gå dit. I don't really want to go there. Jag ville egentligen inte gå dit. I didn't really want to go there. Because ville is in past, in a preteritum form. So the next one, verkligen, which is translated as really, and it adds emphasis, intensifying the statement. For example, hon är verkligen bra på att laga mat. She is really good at cooking. Hon är verkligen bra. Place number 3. And the next one, naturligtvis, naturally, or of course. So it suggests something which is expected or taken for granted. Let's look at the example. Naturligtvis hjälper vi dig med flytten. And of course, this situation is when we have naturligtvis at the first place because it is more natural to say naturligtvis at the first place. But of course, you can say the word, the sentence, for example, vi ska naturligtvis klara med hyran. So we of course will manage to pay for the rent. Okay, let's take the last SATSADVERB in this category, which will sound as givetvis. Obviously, of course. It is very similar to the previous word that we discussed, which sounds as naturligtvis, but with a slightly stronger emphasis on expectation. For example, du är givetvis välkommen att följa med. You are of course welcome to join, or you are obviously welcome to join, to go with us. Du är givetvis välkommen. And of course, givetvis is used at place number 3 in the sentence. Du är givetvis välkommen. And the last category of SATSADVERB is called addition and contrast. So these adverbs will indicate additional information or emphasize a contrast. And the first SATSADVERB that comes to our mind, of course, is the word också, which is translated as also, and this word is used to add on the information to an already established fact or action. Let's look at the example. Vi kan också gå på museet efteråt. We can also go to the museum afterwards. Vi kan också. The next SATSADVERB will sound as även and translated as even, and this word emphasizes inclusion often of someone or something unexpected. I know that the word even or även is having a bit complicated placement in Swedish sentence. So we will look at two examples. Även hon blev förvånad. So even she was surprised. You see, we have även at the first place. Actually, we use även to describe that it is linked to her, because even her is or was surprised. And let's look at the other example, which sounds as jag arbetar även på helgerna. So I work even at the weekend. So here, of course, the placement of även is straight after the verb. Jag arbetar även på helgerna, but även is more linked not to me working, but to me working at the weekend. That I work not only during the week, but at the weekend. So just different context and different, as I already said, emphasizing of something in the sentence. The next SATSADVERB will sound as dessutom, which is translated as furthermore or in addition. So it introduces additional information, often strengthening the previous statement. Let's look at the example. It will be more clear. Remember, don't look only for theory, but check or look for examples, because the more examples you get, the better you have the picture of usage or the broadness of using this or that word in the sentence. So, example. Det var kallt och dessutom började det regna. So it was cold, and furthermore, so like, and in addition, it started raining. And pay attention that dessutom is used in the beginning of the sentence. Of course, here we have a bit complicated sentence, but if you look at the second part of the sentence, we have och dessutom började det regna. So we have not och det började dessutom regna. So we have dessutom började det regna. And the last word in today's video is trots det, which will be translated as despite that, and it emphasizes contrast between expectation and reality. For example, han var trött, men trots det jobbade han till sen. He was tired, but despite that, he worked late. Again, trots det is the SATSADVERB, but it is used the same as dessutom at the first place. But here again, it is used in the middle of the sentence because we have two sentences. Once again, han var trött, men trots det jobbade han till sen. Okej. Så jag hoppas att situationen med SATSADVERB har blivit lite ljusare för dig och du kommer att fortsätta kämpa dig svenska eftersom när man gör något varje dag ska man nå saker som man vill, eller hur? För nu, det var allt. Det var mig, podcasterska Katarina på Måsmarkanalen. Och kom ihåg, du vet mer än du tror.